Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. Tehami. In today's program, we are going to talk about the much anticipated US presidential election 2024 that are slated to be held in November 2024 with two main contenders, the incumbent Democrat Joe Biden with his campaign theme Building a Better America versus former President Donald Trump with his campaign theme Make America Great Again. In today's program, we'll try to understand who stands the brighter chances this time around, former President Donald Trump or President Joe Biden, and what are those key issues both these contenders are trying to capitalize on, and what do opinion polls say, especially after the first presidential debate of 27th of June. Also, the specific outcome in the case of a victory of the either candidate, what sort of implications it is going to have both at home in the US and on the foreign policy front. Let me straight away jump into the discussion and bring in our esteemed panel of guests. We are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Manzoor Afridi, is foreign affairs expert. Dr. Afridi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also on Skype, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Ather Tirmizi. He's senior analyst joining us from the US. Mr. Tirmizi, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Afridi, let me begin the discussion with Mr. Tirmizi. Mr. Tirmizi, this presidential election 2024 happening in the US, how do you think it's different this time around as compared to specifically the last election?
So I think, thank you very much for having me, first of all. I really believe that this time around, it's a different narrative, because 2020, we were in the midst of COVID. America was shut down. There was a huge issue on the economy. People were afraid the economy may tank because of COVID. Everything was shut down. And this time around, you know, the market is open. The jobs are open. The economy is not an issue. The issue that has become is the validity of President Joe Biden. Is he going to be able to continue another 4 years? And that is an issue not only for Republican voters. As you mentioned, after the first debate, that's the issue for a lot of Democratic voters also. In fact, CNN, which is left-leaning channel, they actually mentioned that 67% of CNN viewers thought Donald Trump won the debate versus 31, which thought that Joe Biden won the debate. So I think Democrats are in trouble, and there are a lot of conversations privately happening. Should Joe Biden step aside? So far, I don't think he has mentioned anything internally or externally, but the noise has kind of become loud in terms of, is he going to be able to continue for another 4 years?
So this is a concern within the Democrats about whether he would be in a position, his ability or the capacity to defeat Donald Trump in the campaign, firstly. And in that case, if it does so, does he carry that capacity to govern the administration or the United States of America for the next 4 years? What's your understanding? We've seen the recent most interview. He has categorically denied of backing away from being the candidates on the part of the Democrats. And let me quote him, Mr. Joe Biden, if the Lord Almighty comes out and tells me that I might do that to back away from the campaign, what's your understanding? Is it going to put Democrats in more...
Well, so here's a challenge, right, for Democrats. Democrats realize that President Joe Biden, you know, he is the sitting president. And going against a sitting president, it rarely has happened in the history of the United States. But the validity of him actually winning the election, I'll tell you an interesting fact. In 2016, after Donald Trump became the president, there was a huge pushback from Muslim Americans to vote for Joe Biden. And after a huge push in 2020, we are seeing almost 30 to 40% of Muslim Americans now turning to Republicans. And that's a bloc the Democrats had solidly banked on to come and vote for Democrats. In addition, there's Hispanic vote that's turning to Republicans. There's Asian votes that are also turning to Republicans. So first is the validity of winning based on the demographics as is. Second is, can he win on the policies? So, one of the biggest problem that this administration has had is that they're never in front of the issues. Always they're coming out when the gas prices went up. Instead of President Biden coming out and saying that give us a year, we're working on it, we'll get prices under control. It was Ukraine. It was the other reasons why the gas prices went up. So this administration, unfortunately, has been behind the issues. And Donald Trump's message is very clear. It's freedom and its prosperity. So it's resonating with a lot of Americans because it's not convoluted, it's not complicated. It's a simple message that under President Trump, you will be more free and you will be more prosperous, as opposed to identity politics, unfortunately, that Democrats have succumbed to.
Right, let me proceed towards Dr. Afridi. Dr. Afridi, now, what are the key issues as per your understanding? Are there any certain achievements? Do you firstly agree with what Mr. Tirmizi had to say the Democrats seem to be in trouble? Do you think this trouble increased after the first presidential debate, or were the Democrats already in trouble, or this particular presidential debate actually worsened the scenario?
I think both things are very much concerned. First, if we see the overall performance of the current government and president of the United States, so most of the people, they are not very much satisfied with the delivery of the services, with the UN taxes, with the inland issues, and also the foreign policy or the American global standing, right? This is the one thing. And second, on 27th June, I mean last month, just a few days back, the first presidential campaign and debate when it was happened. So no doubt that many people, they raised their eyebrows about the losing debate of the Biden. I mean the arguments have he put in front of the audience, and people they looked not very much happy about the arguments or about the debate. So here we can see an upper hand of the Trump he has argued, or he has answered even on the media about the this first debate with the Joe Biden. So I think both things are very much important. Let's see for the next presidential debates what happened. Maybe possible that Joe Biden comes with more preparation, and if he really want to satisfy the American public. But I think about the various surveys, if we see the reports in even on social media or print and electronic media, have it has been displayed that Trump he is leading so far, but I think 4 months are there, and anything can happen about this election. And I still remember that was in 2016 when Hillary Clinton, he was running for the presidential election, and at that time most of the people, they were telling that Hillary Clinton, she was winning, but after that we saw that Trump, he won the US election. So same thing can also happen, and I think it's everywhere in the election around the world, right? That we can't expect the right direction till the polling day. But so far, if we see, I think Biden, he is in trouble.
He's in trouble. Is it just because of the lack of delivery? As far as you talked about the services, also the global standing of the US on the international front, or does it have to deal with some of the qualities or the things former President Donald Trump has capitalized upon?
I think more the services, the delivery of services, what he promised during the 2020 elections when he was winning for the first term. So he could not satisfy the American public, and he could not deliver, right, the services, or he could not fulfill the promises what he held with the American public. So this is the thing. I mean, if we see the economy, if we see the healthcare system, if we look into the students' debt or the loan system over there, even the foreign policy or the immigration issue or the abortion issue, or even the border security, all these things. So maybe because of the non-delivery of the services or the poor performance or not the on time, I would say, performance by the incumbent government under the leadership of the Joe Biden. These things are, I think, instrumental and these are very much decisive about the current position of the Joe Biden.
So lots of legal investigations happening as far as former President Donald Trump is concerned. Yeah. Also the case of impeachment. We know there are also 2 other charges. Now, despite all that going on, what is that basic thing that gives Donald Trump that confidence that the world could see in that first presidential campaign?
I think 2 things important. One, the performance of the current president, I mean Joe Biden, have the Trump, he is, in a smart way, he is doing opposition to it, or he is just displaying it and highlighting it in debates, in interviews, and on media channels, one. And second, the populist politics. I mean, we all know that in the 4 years Donald Trump, he remained the president of America, have he much, he made an entry into the American populist politics, right? After, so many decades that we have seen a jubilant masses of America that they were supporting the slogan that to make America great again, how he was campaigning for the border security or the anti-immigration policy. So these American people, they supported Donald Trump. So I think that is the element that even now Donald Trump, he is trying to convince the American audience, the American voters, just to vote for him again to be a president. And the third thing, if I add, I think there's also the age factor of Joe Biden. When he became the president in 2020, he was 78. So the oldest American president. And even now, if he wins, now he will be 82, right? And if he wins and he ends his second term, he will be 86. So I think many Americans, they also raise the same question that it is also one of the strong point in the inability of the Joe Biden administration that he is not delivering what he has already promised to the Americans.
Right, Mr. Tirmizi, let's talk about the first presidential debate. There was a survey by the New York Times released on the eve of that particular event that showed former President Trump with nearly 48% support, close to 4 points ahead of Biden, was around 44%. That was not that much of a difference at that particular point in time. Do you think after that particular first presidential debate, this particular difference between the two has widened to a considerable extent, and this first presidential debate has actually added to the more troubles of the Democrats?
So, yes and no. If you look back, there was a time in 2012 when Obama was running for the second term, and his first debate with then his candidate Mitt Romney, President Obama did horrible in the first debate. But so there are a lot of people in those circles, in the Democratic circles, are saying that, hey, listen, oftentimes when presidents are there for 4 years, it often happens that they're not used to debating people and not answering to people, so they're a little bit rusty. And when Obama came for the second debate, he was much sharper, and a lot of people in the opinion said that he won. But the problem with President Joe Biden is that in America, a lot of people, which majority of them are middle class, are suffering. Housing crises have really been exacerbated since the COVID. Inflation has been not under control. Interest rates, federal interest rates of 7 to 8%. So the challenge, when you take all those challenges, and America has a huge middle class, the problem becomes then, are you talking about the middle class or are you talking about the identity politics? Unfortunately, Democrats are stuck on the identity politics, which means that, African American rights and Muslim American rights and Hispanics and LGBTQ community. And it's all fine because, every community, including like us, we are Muslim Americans, we want our right and we want our place in the society. But all of us also have the middle class problems, which means, high interest rate means all everything that you purchase from your car to your homes become more expensive. Everything in terms of affordability of groceries become more expensive. So when you talk about identity politics, and that's what for the last 4 years have been, and here comes, candidate Donald Trump, who talks about making America great again, means making things affordable for people. It's a simplified message. And in politics, everybody knows that if you have to explain your message to people, your voters, you already lost them. And Democrats are having challenge. And if you look at 2020 election, it is important to know that a lot of people didn't vote for Joe Biden. A lot of people voted against Donald Trump. So President Biden became, of course, there was a base and there was support for President Joe Biden, but there was a whole bunch of voters who just didn't want another 4 years on Donald Trump. And the other choice was just Joe Biden. So he got the votes by default. Versus if you look at Obama, which was, the other Democratic president, it wasn't a vote against somebody, it was vote for Obama. So the challenge for President Joe Biden is that how to convert his, against Donald Trump voter. And people just don't have the appetite anymore, or not many people, not Americans have the appetite, because groceries are 40% more, houses are like, another 40% more. Inflation is still hasn't gone under control. So America.
Unfortunately, we've lost the connection with Mr. Ather Tirmizi, senior analyst, joining us from the US on Skype. We'll try to reconnect with him. As soon as we reconnect with him, we'll resume the discussion with him from this particular point. Let me once again go back to Dr. Afridi. Dr. Afridi, now, when we talk about, as already mentioned by Mr. Tirmizi, that when we talk about the identity politics, also he mentioned Muslim Americans turning to Republicans this time around. Back in 2020, they were towards the Democrats. Do you think the US policy under the Biden administration in the Middle East, especially when we talk about Israel-Gaza conflict, do you think it has to do with that? Or are there any other specific reasons for that? Muslim Americans turning towards Republicans?
Both the domestic issues and also the external front, both are important in this connection. About the domestic issues, as I told you before, that Americans, they were not happy with the Biden services, with the Biden performance. And no doubt that American Muslims, they are also there, and those are included, right? So there is no exception for the American Muslims. Second, at the external front, the biggest issue, conflict, that is the Palestine. And the poor performance of the United States, not only to stop this aggression, not only to block this genocide of the Palestinians in the entire world that is watching. And we have also held so many shows here in this studio about the Palestine. But even the support of the Israel, and we have seen that the American Secretary of State, what he was calling that, and he was telling that Israel would not stop and would not go for ceasefire. It was the right of Israel just to bomb the Gaza and just to do operation against the Hamas. And despite the calls from the international organizations, from the human rights bodies, from the various capitals of the world, especially the Muslim capitals, right? But still the aggression was going on. And it was later on, I think I would call it the lip service, that then America came forward and said, just to stop this aggression and don't bomb the hospitals or just the civilians. And even then, Israel did not listen to America. I think it is very much pertinent, very much significant that the American Muslims now they are turned against the Joe Biden, and they are just having a hope in the shape of Trump. And let me tell you that it is the politics, and whoever plays good and whoever plays the cards in a smart way, he wins, or he convinces the people, he gets the sympathy of the public. It was Trump that even he had announced that about the capital of Israel, what we call it, Baitul Muqaddas, right? So, and it was that time there was a high outrage from the Muslims of the world, from various capitals of the Muslim countries, that it was very much shameful act. But again, if American Muslims, they are having a hope in the shape of Trump to be a new president of America, so it is because of this American position on Israel-Palestine conflict, American inability, or the Joe Biden administration, not having that capacity, maybe intentionally or because of so many issues.
So in that case, if former President Donald Trump comes into power as a result of this election, do you see a massive shift in the policy as far as the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict in Gaza is concerned? I'll come back to you to take your deeper understanding regarding that. We are now honored to have been joined by another participant, Mr. Sarwar Naqvi, former ambassador. Mr. Naqvi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. So far, where do you see Biden's theme of campaign, building a better America, superseding as compared to Trump's Make America Great Again, or is it Trump's campaign which is taking the lead this time around so far?
Well, you see, I think the question that you have posed is interesting, because in actual fact, the contest between the two candidates is a reflection of the deep divisions in US society, the crisis that is facing the United States in its economic sector, and the problem of migration. So all these problems together pose a set of issues on which the two candidates have to take their respective positions. Now, therefore, I don't agree with the theory that Trump represents the redneck white American, and that is his support base. Trump actually appeals to a whole lot of other segments of the society. Secondly, as far as Biden is concerned, Biden is representing the old democratic values of racial equality, affirmative action, and of health care. These are issues that many Americans now consider to be out of date and obsolete, and they think that many changes have to be made. So it is juxtaposition of these two considerations or factors that will determine the result, and both Trump and Biden, I think, are poised to take action in this regard, but how successful each one is, one doesn't know.
Economy you talked about firstly, and the second is going to be the immigration issue. So these are going to determine who is going to stand out victorious. So let's talk about the first presidential campaign, the first presidential debate that happened between the two, with President Biden saying we had an economy that was in a free fall. By the time he referring to President Trump, that when he left, things were in chaos. So we put the things back together. To which former President Trump said, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. So as far as dealing with the situation at home, as far as the economic front is concerned, given the past performance in the previous tenures, in the first tenure during the Trump administration and these last 4 years, which out of the two do you think has performed better as far as economy is concerned?
I think in the economy under Biden has performed better than the economy has performed under Trump. And this is very interesting because Trump uh, puts the lie on whatever is being said by Biden, but that's not correct. In fact, Biden's position in substantive terms was, I thought when I heard the debate, was very solid and very substantive. But Trump was making it very trivial and completely dismissing it. So these two are playing politics, and that is to be disregarded. I think the important thing is that we must look at the actual situation on the ground, and the economy has done quite well under Biden, even though they have huge problems. They have the biggest debt in the world, and they have all kinds of inflationary tendencies. They have the influx of foreign goods into American markets. These are factors that are important. But I think Trump's time, the economy did not do any better, or maybe not as good as that under Biden.
So was it because of the COVID-19 pandemic at that particular point in history during the Trump administration, the economic fallout?
Yes, I think partly that was partly the factor, and Trump's handling of the COVID, his constant arguments with Dr. Fauci, who was the chair of the body that the government had created for combating COVID, and all the sort of theatrics that he was doing did not help the situation. And I think Trump lost a lot of economic leverage under that. But the point is that Trump also has a positive aspect in this Trump's administration, that they were arguing for protecting the U.S. market from foreign goods, particularly the Chinese influx into America, and they were throwing out many foreign concerns and encouraging American businesses to take over. So that way, he was serving America's interests.
Right. So you talked about the other issue, immigration. We've seen very strict policy as far as the Trump administration was concerned. Also, the sealing the border with Mexico, and has been a vow that has been made by him again. He will be reviving that particular policy with a somewhat different policy, a more humane policy. What the news reports suggest about President Joe Biden. What's your analysis regarding that, and how big an impact it is going to have on the overall outcome of the election?
Well, I personally feel that the migration issue is the biggest issue confronting the entire Western world. It's not just the United States, but also Europe. I mean, all the far-right movements and everything basically aimed at stopping influx into their countries of foreign migrant workers, particularly non-white workers. So in case of the US, Trump was actually pretty strict because he divided the families, and there were, many cases of deprivation of family members of youngsters being taken away from their parents and all that. So I think in migration area, Trump was reflecting the feelings of the American people to stop migration as much as possible. Biden applied a more humane touch, but even he was against migration in the same manner. So I think this movement is going to grow, and it's not only just the US, but in the entire Western world.
So how bigger a difference this particular point is going to make as far as the outcome of the election is concerned, with President Joe Biden having somewhat different stance, more humane touch to this particular, but also not clearly being open to this particular problem.
Yes. Yes, I think this will be a very important factor, and the road voters will interpret the position of each candidate as per the background that they have. All the blacks in the U.S. would support the democratic position, if not Biden's position, of a more humane approach. But even the blacks are not in favor of more migration, because that poses challenges for their own prosperity and jobs and all that. So it will depend upon how they look at it. But I think the elections will not depend on the migration issue that much as on the economic issue. The economic factors will play the bigger role.
In case former President Trump comes into power as the result of this election, are we going to see the biggest deportation drive in the U.S. history?
Well, yes, I mean this is on the cards. It's possible that the deportation process may be instituted, but again, this would depend upon the other branches of the government. You see, the U.S. is not just the White House. It is also Congress. It is also the Supreme Court. It is also the other departments or ministries. So I think there will be, like, the Department of Justice will have a role to play in this. The Department of Homeland Security will have a role to play in this. So I think it is quite likely that the policy of Biden, of Trump, would be very strict with migration. But I don't think Biden will be less strict, even if it is not in the same manner.
Right, let me proceed towards Dr. Afridi. Dr. Afridi, as your understanding, how big an impact this migration issue is going to have on the overall result? And with a very strict policy during the last tenure, President Trump had been cracking down on this particular issue. We have seen also making him a pledge of reviving that particular policy once he comes back into power. Do we foresee the largest deportation drive happening in the U.S. history once he comes into power back again?
I think this immigration issue, it is one of the top three issues or the agendas of the both now candidates for presidency, I mean Joe Biden and Trump. And both are very much concerned about this issue, as Ali Sarwar Naqvi Saab also discussed about it. I think if Trump comes into power, he will be more strict about this issue, and about the just deportation. It will create problems for America while dealing with other states of the world. So I think it will be a bit difficult for both, if Joe Biden he wins or Trump wins, for both. So it may not take place, or it may happens for a short period of time, but not for the all 4 years of Biden or Trump's in power. As far as the Joe Biden is concerned, he is also concerned about this issue, but he seems a little bit soft in his tone about this immigration issue. But if he comes into power, so definitely that he will also have some policies to be shaped and to be devised, formulated by his administration. And what are the allegations against him now in these 4 years what he passed? So he will try just to compensate, and he will try to overcome all those difficulties what he was dealing with this immigration issue.
So Earlier, I was taking your view regarding the conflict in the Middle East, the Israel-Palestine conflict, specifically given the situation in Gaza. If President Trump comes into power, do you foresee any substantive or a massive shift in the policy of the US on that particular front?
I don't think so. That there will be a potential shift or massive shift or big shift in American foreign policy towards Palestine issue or even towards Middle East. We have experienced already Trump, and we have also observed Joe Biden administration, and more or less they were same in their policies vis-a-vis Palestine conflict. So the biggest thing for any country, that is the national interest, and I would say biggest example of this national interest to be secured, it is connected very much with United States of America.
Right. Mr. Naqvi, as per your understanding, you've already talked in detail about what sort of impact the economic issue as well as the migration issue might have on the outcome of the result. How big an impact do you think the issues on the foreign policy front for the US, particularly the situation in Gaza over the last 9 months, will have for both of the candidates?
Well, in the first place, Jawad, I personally feel that in America, in American politics, and I have watched American elections since Kennedy-Nixon time. So in American politics, foreign policy does not play a major role, and the debate is largely about domestic issues. Having said that, I think the considerations between of the two candidates, of the situation in the Middle East would of course figure, because it is important. But similarly, Russia-Ukraine will figure. We have to look at it in a global way. The Middle East problem.
Very well. I understand your point very well. As far as you mentioned that foreign policy, when it comes to US presidential election, that doesn't seem to play that substantive or a massive role. But this time around, we have seen since 7th of October, the situation as it has unfolded there in Gaza, with the policy of the Biden administration also coming under criticism, the massive protests happening at home, the public opinion going against that particular policy of President Joe Biden. Don't you think that is going to have an impact? Already we had Mr. Ather Tirmizi joining us from the US. He was also saying that Muslim Americans this time around are turning towards the Republicans. So what's your understanding after the 7th of October? Still, you think it's not going to have a much bigger an impact on the outcome of the election?
No, I said, I did qualify what I said by saying that the Middle East situation is one which is likely to draw considerable attention. But again, there, I am not very hopeful of any substantive change on the part of the American administration. And that is because they are both very pro-Israel. I mean, their support for Israel is enormous. And as far as Trump is concerned, he has family links with the Jewish community. So, they are so deeply committed to the security of Israel and to the interests of Israel that they are not going to be fair in their dealings in the Middle East, and we won't see any major change that might occur between the two administrations.
You already talked about that conflict in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. Do you think this foreign policy aspect is going to have any sort of an impact and on the outcome of the election? If not so, after the elections, do you see any substantive change or a shift when we talk about former President Trump coming into power? Because we have seen by his statements the kind of narrative that he carries along as far as NATO's and America's allies' financial obligations towards the US is concerned.
I think Trump, when if he is elected, he will be he will not be very sympathetic to NATO, and I think the root problem is NATO in the sense in Russia-Ukraine issue, because it is the incursion of NATO in the periphery of the old Soviet Union or in Russia, which is the cause of this entire crisis. So if Trump does not encourage NATO to co-opt members, including Ukraine, into its fold, then things will be better for as far as the tension between the Russians and the Ukrainians is concerned. And that might lead to some...
It would be better if Trump comes into power. The de-escalation of the situation as far as the Ukraine conflict is concerned, that is what...
I think that's possible, yes.
Complete your thought, Mr. Naqvi.
Yeah. I think that the de-escalation is more likely because Trump is not going to back NATO the same way that Biden is backing NATO. And if that be the case, then Russia would be amenable to some discussion regarding a solution. So that's my particular feeling, because the whole issue started because NATO was making incursions into the periphery of Russia.
Right, Dr. Afridi, your last quick comments regarding as to the situation in Ukraine. Do you think it has that capacity to have an impact on the outcome of the election? If not, after the election results, if Trump comes into power, what's your understanding is going to happen on this particular front? De-escalation of the situation, or this problem is going to linger on as it is happening right now?
Well, this Ukraine conflict, it will not have that much impact on the ongoing presidential campaign, right, in United States of America. Maybe a little bit touch if anybody, I mean Joe Biden or Trump, they give, but I don't think so very much big impact.
Is there somehow any connection with the provision of billions of dollars of aid to Ukraine with the economic hardships at home?
No doubt, yes.
So if there is a connection, so why wouldn't this particular conflict have an impact on the election result?
I told you that it will have little bit touch. I mean, Americans, they are very much concerned about their taxes. Every time if there is presidential election, Americans, they ask their president that where their taxes are, you know, they are spent. I mean, whether that was the Vietnam War or according to various surveys I have gone through and I have read that Americans, they were asking their president, the Bush Jr. and also Barack Obama and even the Trump about the Afghanistan, that they were, America was spending too much billions of dollars, right? So when there is any kind of talk about taxes or about economy, then yes, Ukraine issue may be discussed. But if Trump, he comes into power, I think there are more chances about the de-escalation of this.
Dr. Manzoor Afridi, foreign affairs expert, thank you very much for joining us in the studio tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype, we were joined by Mr. Sarwar Naqvi, former ambassador. Mr. Naqvi, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.